Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful, sunny Naples, Florida. And this is the highly anticipated and brand new Olympus OMD EM-5 Mark II with promises of even better image stabilization, a multi-shot sensor shifting high-resolution image mode, and has Olympus finally gotten serious about video? Well, keep in mind this is a pre-production model, but we gave the Olympus OMD EM-5 Mark II a 63.5 out of 70 and our highly recommended rating. Now, if you want to know how we arrived at that conclusion, well, stick around and find out. In the world of Micro Four Thirds, it's pretty safe to say that when the Olympus OMD EM-5 debuted in 2012, that it brought professional credibility to the Micro Four Thirds world of cameras, specifically for compact system cameras. It proved to be a groundbreaking and highly capable camera that won over the hearts and minds of many professional photographers. Complete with its 5-axis in-body image stabilization system, phenomenal image quality, and its really teeny tiny profile, it was easy to see why the EM-5 was such a hit with critics, consumers, and professionals alike. However, there were some areas where the EM-5 fell a little short. Specifically, it had mediocre video quality and relatively short battery life. Well, it's 3 years later and enter the EM-5 Mark II. So what's the headline? Well, after playing with the Mark II for the past few weeks, it's pretty clear to me that the headline is Olympus is finally getting serious about video. Now, let's be perfectly clear. There's nothing groundbreaking or earth-shattering here with regard to video. But what is here is a huge leap in an area where Olympus has, for all intents and purposes, really has neglected until now. Now, just a couple of quick points about this review. If you've watched my channel for a while, then you probably know that I generally review camera lenses. Well, believe it or not, this is actually the very first time that I've ever actually reviewed a camera. And as such, we're going to be grading this review slightly differently. We're going to be grading the EM-5 Mark II based on the following criteria: build quality, ergonomics and ease of use, performance, image quality, video quality, quality of the results, and lastly, value. Which means we're going to be grading the Mark II based on a 70-point scale and not the usual 50-point scale. So, with that out of the way, let's check out the latest offering from the folks over at Olympus. Alright, so first up is build quality. And let me just say that this thing is really solid and grippy. Feels really nice in the hand. And the chassis is made out of metal and it's built to withstand the elements as it's dust and weather sealed almost to the extreme. In fact, Olympus has a great video on their website that literally shows the OMD EM-5 Mark II covered in snow, and there it is shooting away as if it were a bright and beautiful sunny day like it is here in Naples. Now, coming in at 469 grams with a battery and a memory card, which is just slightly more than 1 pound, which to me is reasonably lightweight, yet it's still built really well for something so light. Also new is the flip out and tilt screen, which is pretty neat. Now again, it's nothing groundbreaking in cameradom, but it's long awaited, and at this point it's kind of an expected feature, and it's much better than the previous generation. We also get a real mic port this time, which is so much better than the Olympus only setup we were subjected to with the EM-5. The buttons this time are very tactile and not too mushy. You can actually hear a subtle click when you press any one of these buttons. The dial placement is, to my hand, perfect, and I really like the new placement of the on-off switch. Now, the downside is the quality of the dials and the switch, the on-off switch, as they're not quite up to snuff with the rest of the body, but really that's about it. Overall, it's a nice combination of tight metal construction that's sealed against the elements. It's grippy in the hand and it's lightweight, which is great if you're going to take it out shooting all day. So for build, there's really not a lot to fault here, and we gave it a 9.5 out of 10. So next up is ergonomics and ease of use. And let's expand on the button layout just a little bit, especially when compared to the original OMD EM-5. A few things worth noting. There are significantly more buttons on the Mark II, specifically customizable function buttons. There's also dedicated HDR and live view buttons located right here on top. They're way more accessible and way better than the original. The mode dial has this locking mechanism that will prevent you from accidentally changing modes during shooting. And the control dials are situated slightly closer together, which is kind of a wash to me compared to the original. One of the really big pluses this time is this flip out and tilting screen, as it allows me to shoot videos when I'm on my own and I can preview the composition before I shoot. I know this isn't a new feature in cameradom, it's just a new feature for Olympus, which will help make what was really a good product into a great one. Now, access to the side ports here no longer require you to separate the screen from the body in order to get at them. And lastly, Olympus has one of the most expansive and customizable menu systems of just about any manufacturer. You can really make your Olympus your camera, as there's a setting for just about everything. And truthfully, it'd be impossible to cover them all in this review, but new this time for the EM-5 series are time-lapse settings, high-resolution mode, focus peaking, yes, and keystoning, amongst others. Features that were previously, or most of the features, were previously available only on the EM-1. Now, there's a lot to love here and a lot to cover. Knowing that it's impossible for us to cover everything, just know that Olympus has really thought this thing through. It's an ergonomic joy to use. But keep in mind, because there are so many options available in the menu system, it can take a while to locate exactly what it is that you're looking for. And lastly, though the buttons are easily accessible and tactile, they're also really small, and much smaller than you're going to find on one of those DSLR cameras. And if you have really big hands, it can be a challenge to use a body with buttons this small. But chances are pretty good if you're considering this camera, you probably knew that anyway. So for ergonomics and ease of use, the Mark II gets another 9.5 out of 10. So next up is performance. We already told you that it's built reasonably well and it's relatively easy to use, but how does it perform? Well, it's really fast. For starters, AF performance is just top-notch. It's still contrast detect AF, but most of the Olympus lenses focus so quickly that even if they miss and fly past the intended target, they return so quickly and capture focus so accurately that the effect is basically instantaneous and stunningly accurate. I seem to be nailing focus accurately in the high 90s percentage-wise. As for focus tracking, as I've mentioned in previous reviews, I don't shoot a lot of sports, but I still needed some kind of anecdotal benchmark, so here's yet another sample of my son running through my backyard with the EM-5 in focus tracking. Okay, that was pretty impressive. Granted, it was low speed continuous, but that is such a vast improvement over the original EM-5, as we nailed, I think, focus. It was in focus on virtually every single shot in that entire series, and he was running at me at a pretty decent clip. Not as fast as a middle linebacker, of course, but he was coming at me at a pretty good clip, and we managed to capture everything in focus with the new continuous tracking, so that's a big plus for the EM-5 Mark II. Now, as far as what's new from the original EM-5, the real big game changer is the new 5-stop in-body image stabilization system that Olympus has added to the Mark II. It's really effective and does an incredible job of allowing you to shoot still subjects at lower ISOs in low light situations. For example, I was able to pull off sharp images in as little as 1/4 of a second, not to mention how much it helps in video. Now, it's not a Nebula or a Ronin stable, but it's way better than you might expect, and it makes hand-holding look acceptably professional. The second biggie is the new high-resolution mode that combines 8 shots into one 40-megapixel image. This is great for static still subjects, but it's kind of worthless for moving subjects. But there's value, say, if you shoot product photography, and to a lesser extent if you shoot static landscapes. Just keep in mind that you're going to need a really stable tripod when you use the high-resolution mode. Now, speaking of video, one of the key areas that Olympus finally got serious about this time is video. Yay! Now, it took a while, but Olympus improved the bitrate and gave us a lot more options for video. Now, there's nothing earth-shattering here, but it's a big improvement over every other Olympus Micro Four Thirds body. We even get 60 frames per second, which will give you effective slow motion. That's pretty sweet. Sadly, there's no 4K or a flat image profile, but it's such a marked improvement over the previous generation that you can now say that Olympus has finally gotten to a point where they're in the game, but they're not a leader. Of course, it's also no longer an Achilles heel for them as well. Now, other big improvements for the EM-5 Mark II include Wi-Fi, a 1/8000th of a second max shutter speed. We get the same viewfinder as the EM-1, which is bright, fast, and crystal clear. The RAW buffer has been improved to up to 40 images. We also get the 81-point autofocus system. There's also a new time-lapse option, which was previously available only in the EM1. It might have been available in the EM10, I'm not sure, I never used it, but I just know it wasn't available in the EM5. There's also a new anti-shock shutter option for smoother and quieter operation. There's also silent shutter mode, which is digital and completely silent. By the way, speaking of the shutter and noise, the noise of the new shutter mechanism in regular mode is noticeably more quiet than both the EM1 and the EM5. I mean, listen to this. I mean, you can barely hear that. Now, there are plenty of other new features, but those are the biggies. Now, it's not all good news, because on the downside, the one area that Olympus sadly didn't address was battery life. I'll just say it right now, I love this camera, I really do, but the battery performance is really disappointing. Moreover, the battery performance actually decreased from the last generation from an estimated 350 shots to now only 310 shots. That's not good. But to give Olympus the benefit of the doubt, the new in-body image stabilization does consume a lot of power. And to be fair, I can live with the weaker battery performance to gain this level of stabilization. But battery life is an area Olympus really needs to address, especially when you consider the GH4's battery comparably lasts forever. Granted, the GH4 doesn't have in-body stabilization, but its battery is good for slightly less than double the number of shots as the EM-5 Mark II, which is a shame, because now that Olympus has addressed video, they really need to address the battery. But all in for performance, it's a very capable body that performs extremely well. I just wish Olympus had addressed battery life in the same manner they had addressed video. So for performance, we give the EM-5 Mark II a very solid 9 out of 10. So next up is image quality. And one of the high points of the entire OMD line has been the amazing image quality that these little cameras are capable of pumping out, especially from something so small. Now, there's a new sensor in the Mark II, and though the resolution is unchanged at 16 megapixels, we put it through the paces, and it seems that ISO performance has improved, but we'd say only marginally so, like maybe a half a stop. But here are some ISO comparisons between the EM5 and the Mark II, and we even threw some examples in from the EM1 just for good measure. As we mentioned previously, Olympus has also added a high-resolution mode, which will give us 40 megapixel still photos, and it utilizes this new sensor shifting technology, which used to be only reserved for medium format cameras. The camera will take 8 shots and compile them into one high-resolution image. Now, Olympus says this is best for still subjects like product photography, and to a lesser extent, static landscape photography. Personally, I'd like to try this mode with the new Olympus 7 to 14mm f2.8 Pro when it comes out in some of my real estate photography. To me, that could be a really interesting combination. Obviously, the high resolution mode won't work with moving subjects. I think I've said that like 4 times already. But anyway, here's an example taken with the regular mode and then with the high resolution mode. Now keep in mind, we don't have a RAW converter, so the bulk of these images were shot in fine JPEG resolution, which leaves a lot up to the camera for image processing. But Olympus, in my opinion, has a great JPEG engine. Colors are rich and not overly saturated. In fact, the colors just pop. Now with the right lens, and Olympus has a lot of them, you can expect sharpness from corner to corner. The OMD EM-5 Mark II, like the rest of the OMD line, is capable of world-class imagery and easily earns a 10 out of 10. So next up is video quality, and we're actually shooting this section of the review on the EM-5 Mark II. Now, as we mentioned earlier in the review, video is the one area that Olympus has largely ignored with the OMD series, which frankly has been a shame, because the entire series have been great cameras otherwise. Well, with all the changes for the better in the EM-5 Mark II, it's still not up to, say, a GH4, but the bitrate is much higher than before, and overall video quality is vastly improved. Now, couple that with the new in-body stabilization system, then you can handhold and get professional results that, in my opinion, rival a 3-axis gimbal device. And here's a sample of me hand-holding with the EM-5 Mark II. Now, moving around and filming in a scene simultaneously is another matter altogether, because unless you have a very steady hand, you're still going to notice some jumpiness and some lag in your footage. Now, we also get 60 frames per second at 1080 at 51 megabits per second natively, which means the EM-5 Mark II should be able to better handle motion in video, and better certainly than the EM-5. And with 60 frames per second, we also get effective slow motion footage as well, and you can check out this street shot here. Pretty cool, right? Well, all this is welcome, but to be clear, the Mark II is still not a GH4 for video. It's clearly better for Olympus, but it just brings video from Olympus to a place that's acceptable and adequate in the marketplace today. And it would make a good B camera, which I have actually used it for successfully. Now, this time around, we also get focus peaking, and we even get to choose the color of the highlights to show us what's in focus. It's a nice touch, and it works really well. We also get a dedicated mic jack, way better than the EM-5 Mark I, which had a proprietary device for audio, and it also occupied the hot shoe. So all in, we're really glad to see Olympus finally taking video a little bit more seriously, and even if there isn't 4K or higher bit rates available that say are available in the GH4, but at least what Olympus is putting out now is, in my opinion, acceptable relative to the other options available in the marketplace. So for video quality, we give the EM-5 Mark II a 7.5 out of 10. So next up is the quality of the results. Well, we've explained the image quality and we've explained the video quality, and now we're going to put it all together. As with all of my reviews, rather than me talking about the results, it's probably better if I just show you the results. The next 2 to 3 minutes will be a series of stills and video clips showcasing the creative possibilities with the Olympus OMD EM-5 Mark II, and this is a great all-around camera. So last up and arguably most important is value. And at $1,099, the OMD EM-5 Mark II is on the higher end for micro four thirds cameras. It's a great camera with some really neat and innovative features. It's also a camera that does just about everything really well. But would I want to use this camera over, say, the EM-1? Well, truthfully, I prefer the handling of the EM-1 as it feels more like a professional camera with its deep grip, better weather sealing, and frankly more solid build. But boy, I sure wish the EM-1 could do video like the new EM-5 Mark II, with the better bit rates and the better in-body stabilization. But when compared to, say, the Panasonic GH4, if you're a video shooter, then truthfully it's kind of a no-brainer. Get the GH4. As for video, it is, in my opinion, the best bang for buck for video in the marketplace today. But if you're primarily a photographer, then again, speaking for myself, I prefer the Olympus cameras in general for stills, as ergonomically I find the interface much more intuitive and easier to use than Panasonic's. And I love Olympuses when I'm traveling or on family vacations. But enough about that and back to value. The OMD EM-5 Mark II is not the most expensive micro four thirds camera, but it is one of the most capable and one of the best all-rounders available in the marketplace today. Great stills, decent video, great build, weather sealing, phenomenal in-body stabilization, and new high-resolution mode. There's just a lot here that's new and innovative. And overall, there's a lot to love about the EM-5 Mark II, even for $1,099. So for value, the Mark II gets a solid 9 out of 10. Okay, so to wrap up this review, we gave the Olympus OMD EM-5 Mark II a 63.5 out of 70 and our highly recommended rating. The final word. The Olympus OMD EM-5 Mark II is a great camera that does just about everything well without any real glaring weaknesses, with the exception of mediocre battery life. But that aside, the EM-5 Mark II is a great all-around performer that would make even the most ardent of DSLR camera users likely to smile. With its great build, awesome image quality, fast and accurate autofocus, improved video quality, improved ISO capability, and a myriad of other small tweaks that altogether add up to a very worthy successor to the original EM-5. I just wish Olympus had given the Mark II a more powerful battery to go along with all the other improvements. This is Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Naples, Florida. If you like these reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.